Where should I sit?
Sit in the middle.
Okay. All right. We'll wait for the people to settle.
They don't let me do this.
I think our microphones are not working, no?
Hello, hello.
Oh. Yours
What
is
can I say?
working.
We're at least talking.
Hello. Okay.
Mine too? Okay.
Let's settle down so we can get started.
Why don't we chat in the coffee break? That may be easier. Because, I mean, if these guys start now. Yeah, it's just that we'll get cut off, probably.
So thank you, Dilek, and thank you, Ruhi. My name is T.M. Ravi. I'm the managing director of a AI-focused fund called The Hive. So we'll start off with maybe something that I think is in a lot of people's minds. You know, this time last year, there was a lot of excitement about kind of chat, and chat is the new app, and people, of course, we saw a picture of the movie Her, and so there is kind of very high expectations. And in general, there is a sort of a sense in the market that there's kind of been a lot of talk, but a very little utility. So it's mostly kind of chat, conversational agents, chatbots have been a kind of a gimmick. So maybe I think there's a long conversation here about technology, but before we get into that, just in terms of thinking about like a Turing test, where do you think we are today? How long will it take? Give us your thoughts. Do you want to start, Dilek?
So, I think my personal assistant actually shouldn't be able to pass the Turing test, because I should be able to tell things that a human cannot do. And it should be very easy. Oh, you cannot hear me? Sorry. Is it better? Any better? Okay, I'll hold it like this. So in certain areas, I think the machines could do much better than the humans. So the Turing test is not defined in there. I should be able to ask my admin person or assistant, just check all my emails from Ruhi, and then summarize them, and then check if he needs anything from me, right? Something like this should not be done, cannot be done by a human in a very short time. It should be doable by the personal assistant very quickly. So I think it should be very easy. And then if we get to that point where it is very easy to make sure to understand that it's actually not the personal assistant, but not the human, but the personal assistant. So I think the definition of the Turing test for personal assistants is slightly different than what we think about it. But that said, still, there are many things that we should do. Be it more like a chit-chat type of a setup. There are many things that we should do, understanding the context, having some common sense, being able to integrate knowledge, world knowledge, and then I think we can talk about like passing the Turing test. I think we are not there yet.
Go ahead. Ruhi?
Yeah, I think this is sort of the question is half glass half empty, half full. If people are expecting instant gratification, I don't think we are there. That will take some time. You're not hearing me well. How about this? You hear me well now? Okay. So I was saying that there are a lot of positive progress, but if we are looking for something like Star Trek computer, we are not there, and that's a journey. It will take time. Having said this, though, there's a lot of value in the personal assistants that people are using, and it's they're using it daily. We have seen it with Alexa and Alexa devices. It's part of their routine. It's becoming dispensable to their daily lives. We have also a program called Alexa Prize. This is I don't know whether you heard about it. This is actually an AI competition that's the universities are participating. The goal is, can you achieve a conversation with an AI agent for 20 minutes? This year, this is an ambitious goal. We knew that this is you cannot achieve this year, but it's a multi-year effort. So we completed the first phase of it. I think it will be still a few years out, maybe more, that you can have a human-like conversation with this agent.
We brought up kind of multiple issues here, so let me kind of rapid fire, kind of go off one after another. So first on kind of domain, domain scaling, and I was at a conference, a Bank of America conference, where it seems like they're very effectively using chatbots, but for very kind of well-defined persona, a broker, a trader, and so forth. So kind of talk a little bit about domain scaling, kind of narrow versus wide, fixed versus limited, those kinds of things, and how effective these bots can be.
Okay.
Go for it.
I think these bots, the needs are different. When if you are a Capital One or Chase or one of these financial institutions, their goal is, they have tens of different products, programs that they want to, engage with the customer or sell to the customer. They want to go very deep in these domains. On the other hand, the general purpose assistant, you may not want to go that deep. With Alexa, you may, want to check the, your bank account balance and some payments, but you're not going to go, and refinance your mortgage using Alexa. This is so the needs are different. These not just the financial companies. Their business is very deep, and when from their perspective, the value that they deliver to the customer is, everything that you can do with a web browser, I should be able to do that through chatbot. But then when you work back from the customer, though, whether you want to actually do that through voice, there are different use cases. Sometimes it's some scenarios are nice for the voice. Some others you need to see, because the information throughput is faster. If you look at the screen with all the information, you cannot convey the same information with voice. So we need to keep that in mind. Not everything is great for voice.
Dilek, the kind of failure to kind of meet expectations, is it kind of more likely that if we are narrower, we can really deliver utility in voice and chatbots?
I think it depends. I think it depends on the purpose of the application. So if the main goal is just to help users to accomplish their goals, probably yes, that is the solution. But if we want to go towards more person-like personal assistants that could do many things that we want to accomplish, probably that is not the case.
Got it. Ruhi talked about kind of long conversations. So maybe that's another sort of interesting discussion, kind of a few turns versus multiple turns, short versus long. Dilek, where do you think we are? Kind of what's the state of the art right now?
I think we do pretty good in single domain conversations. We don't do as good in shifting or helping the users shift from one thing to the other. So as in Ruhi's example, or a similar one, when you have a movie showtime system, people come, they don't just ask for the showtime, but they ask, is this show going to be crowded? Or if I go earlier, would the ticket prices be cheaper? So even if you have a system that tells people showtimes, they have lots of other questions and they don't really know what exactly the boundary to what the system can accomplish is.
Ruhi?
I don't know what else to add to the next point.
Yeah. Dilek, you talked about sort of personalization. So personalization, context, memory. What's sort of, where are we? Ruhi, maybe we start with you.
I can start.
Yeah.
So I think the personalization, that was my last slide actually. When we are interacting with these systems, we assume that system has the full context of us. They know me, they know my likings, they know my preference, they know my contacts, they know everything I do. That is not the case right now. As a result, there's an expectation mismatch. Your mental model of the assistant is different than what the assistant does. And we're trying to sort of bridge that gap. So the assistant should know as much about you as possible, so that it can help you. It can sort of fill in the gaps, so to speak, and get you what you need to do. This maybe going back to the earlier point. I believe people will not actually have a lot of time and going and chatting with these agents for the sake of chatting. Kids will do that. But at the end of the day, you have a limited time, and you want to get things done. You want to complete tasks. So that is, I think, where the concentration will be. Can I do 5 things in 1 minute as opposed to 1 thing in 5 minutes? Mm-hmm. So I expect the focus in that direction.
Got it. Yeah. Got it. You touched a little bit upon sort of, you said, pictures or images can be a great complement. Let me start off with the questions. Kind of, where do you see text sort of based chat? Where do you see voice chat? How do you think of kind of omni-channel? And where does sort of where is text more important than voice? Because I think a general theme we've heard is kind of voice is the next thing. Yeah. Is that really true, or are there going to be different use cases for voice versus text versus other things? What about kind of touch? What about other kinds of channels? Go for it.
Okay. So I think just looking back, I was reading in the news, Chilu was executive vice president at Microsoft overseeing Cortana. He made a remark. He's now at Baidu, I believe.
Baidu.
Yeah. He made a remark that Cortana, the miss with Cortana was putting personal assistant on the desktop. That's actually, to me, a miss from the friction, the miss on the friction of where customers struggle. If you're on your desktop, you have the huge real estate. You have your mouse, you have the whole screen, and the value that personal assistant is going to provide there is less, minimal. As opposed to you look at Alexa, and you are in the home, Alexa is there, and you don't have your phone with you all the time. You need simple things, checking weather, setting timer, alarm, playing music.
So you're saying text chat would maybe apply to your kind of laptop, but voice is to your machine.
Exactly. So I think, again, going back and focusing where the customer's frictions are is the key. If you are not doing that, then you're not solving a customer's problem.
Dilek?
To me, they are kind of similar. If you solve the conversational interactions via voice, then text is already given. And there are certain times when you are sitting in front of your desktop, maybe it's easier to just type it, but not vice versa, right? Like when you're driving, it's not going to be possible to type. You actually want to use the voice, or when you're cooking or doing these other things. So voice definitely brings more to the table. But then these 2 different genres could also be, they are both noisy. The speech recognition qualities or TTS qualities certainly very important for voice conversations. Otherwise, people won't want to talk to it but want to type. But then they each have different types of noise. So if I'm typing, I don't want to type too much. Maybe I'm just moving more towards search queries, so my utterances become ungrammatical. Or when I'm speaking, of course, there's all forms of other noise. So.
And how do you see sort of augmentation of voice or text with other kind of modes?
I think that is very important, because there are things, it's like a picture is worth a million words, right? So there are things where you cannot explain what you want to explain to the user in words. Like there are restaurants in Mountain View, just counting them one by one, or just making a text that is not going to make much sense. You just put them on a map, and then that information is much more valuable. So multimodality is certainly very important for enabling conversational assistance. And that's yet another addition towards like real personal assistance versus virtual personal assistance, which can actually interact in multimodal information also.
Got it. And of course, we have AR, VR coming down, and people will want to sort of touch and virtual objects and so forth. So there'll be other ways to interact with images. Good. So, so you mentioned, Dilek, kind of machines. Voice is natural to machines. I think maybe Ruhi, you mentioned it. And so it could be anything. It could be my lawnmower, it could be my toys, it could be anything. Any kind of, we'll be in a few years surrounded with a sea of devices and potentially they can all talk. But maybe most of them or many of them will not be connected to some big cloud with big banks of GPUs running Alexa or running some Google or other product. How do you see kind of cloud-based and kind of big GPU cloud-based solutions versus something that just sits on the edge, works in an autonomous way? Because if my kid has a Barbie, I for sure don't want sort of a cloud-based interaction.
So, okay, let me go on this one. First, so I do believe if things run on device, then we do solve many of the issues, and we can use more information from the context, etc. So some of these engineering issues are easier. But if it is on device and not on the cloud, then these dreams of learning from a lot of data, from multiple users' data, becomes more challenging. So currently, there is work on federated learning, for example, trying to tackle how do we actually federate learning and then we can learn from each of these individual devices. If those are successful, I think it would be great. At some point, I do imagine, even for just federated learning, there has to be some connection, but then the type of the connection to the cloud is going to be different in those situations.
Ruhi, cloud versus edge voice enablement?
I think there is the pros and cons with both. The advantages. Advantages of running things on device, it's faster, and you have your customer's data is right there, so you don't have privacy concerns, so to speak. But also you have very limited computational resources, and running on things on the cloud, you can, you have huge capacity, compute, storage, so you can bring in other data that you don't have access to. I believe the things will be in the cloud. You will still do stuff on the compute, on the edge, on the device, but it will be probably low resource and low capabilities, like maybe wake up word, for example, wake up voice. Having said the other question that you said, I think people, the customers, they don't want to interact with different agents on different devices. They want to interact with the same agent, whether it's a smartphone, whether it's Echo device, whether it's their fridge, whether it's something else. You can, having 30 different agents, because the device is different, it just doesn't make sense to the customers. Like, the customer should know, the agent should know that it's still me, my context is carried around, I'm just interacting through a different endpoint.
So you're saying kind of a home or a workspace of the future will be all Amazon or all Google or all Baidu or all Apple?
I'm not suggesting that, but I'm suggesting from the customer's perspective. Like, again, what is intuitive for the customer? What's friction-free? If you ask them, go, manage this 10 different agents and different way of interaction modes, it's not going to stick. The easiest thing for a customer is those difficulties should be abstracted. They shouldn't be dealing with it.
Let's kind of take maybe, we have a few more minutes. I want to just take two questions. One on just sort of consumer commodity type applications of voice versus sort of business use cases. Do you see sort of significant differences between the two, Dilek?
So if I need a voice assistant for personal use cases, so for example, I do go into a lot of meetings back to back, make a lot of promises, etc., etc. I can easily, if I had a meeting assistant, if we had a meeting assistant, that would be very useful, very helpful. So I think that's a different.
Cisco, I don't know if you saw, announced Spark Assistant 2 days back. Yeah.
So I think that type of assistants are maybe more useful in the business environments than the personal assistants. Or actually some of the things that the consumer assistants do, we use it for business purposes, for calendars and reminders, etc. also. So.
Because there's a lot of excitement around chatbots, and customer service, customer support, where there are tens of thousands of people doing kind of relatively kind of menial, repetitive tasks.
I think in the future, I expect that there will be specialized bots or agents, if you will, because ultimately it's going back to the data. The calendar data, for example, where does it sit? And some purchase data, where does it sit? So I expect different people, different companies, they're going to build these agents. And then there will be integration. That they may actually integrate into the big generic agent, so that you can hand over. If you're talking about calendar, you may hand over that to this specialized agent who's deep in that domain.
Got it. So we hope to see you at this conference next year. But let me ask you sort of, where do you see us kind of 12 months from now in this space? This past 12 months, for example, venture funding in assistance autonomous agents has kind of gone down because there's been a lot of hype and we were not able to meet those expectations. Where do you see it? Dilek, maybe starting with you?
That's a good question. A year, I think, is too short of a time span for personal assistants. Of course, I imagine there are going to be some developments, but I think a year is still too short to have the real.
Few years from now? Two,
maybe
3 years?
Maybe a few years from now, yes.
Ruhi?
Yeah. I think when I think about this AI, what happened with the recent advances in deep learning, these recent developments, breakthroughs, it reduced significantly the cost of prediction. And this is not just personal assistance. It's actually, if you look at in different areas, in different business segments, the cost of prediction is a lot cheaper. And this is foundational. And you're seeing this in agriculture, in finance, in medicine, that I will see more positive developments, more breakthroughs. It's going to happen in the next, say, 3 to 5 years. It's also a lot of smart minds are actually, their eyes and ears are on this, they're working hard. So I see a bright future.
I do too, because I do agree with you. Some of the best minds are working on the problem, and maybe it's not 1 or 3 years, but in the 10 years we are going to get, at least in all the meaningful domains, sort of an ability for a high utility agent. Thank you, Dilek, and thank you, Ruhi, for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks.